Thanksgiving always felt safe to me. Loud voices, familiar smells. My dad's old music playlist humming under the clatter of dishes and distant laughter from the cousins' table. It was the one time of year everything felt like it still worked, even when the rest of life felt stuck or strange. That year, I brought Erin. Yeah, same name, different woman. New relationship. 3 months in. She was sharp, funny, and the kind of pretty that made people glance twice in a grocery store. I'd met her at a work event. She sold real estate. I fixed broken servers and made companies' networks play nice. I told her about Thanksgiving weeks in advance. You sure I won't be crashing anything sacred? She joked, leaning on my kitchen counter with a glass of wine. They'll love you, I said. And I believed it. She walked into that house with her usual confidence, dark dress, light smile, a bottle of red in each hand. My mom kissed her on both cheeks. My brother gave her a once-over that lingered longer than I liked. My uncle offered a joke too old to be funny. And just like that, she blended in like she'd always been there. Dinner was loud, as always. Turkey, sweet potatoes. Too many carbs and stories that had been told for years but never got old. Then dessert came. And so did the moment. We were all seated again, plates licked clean, a few people sipping from second glasses of wine. Erin leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand, and smiled at my mom. I almost didn't come today, she said playfully. Mom raised an eyebrow. Oh. Well, Erin said, glancing sideways at me, I had a different invitation. A secret Thanksgiving, you might say. My brother choked on his drink. My mom's smile flickered. My cousin looked at her lap. And me? I sat frozen, the smile halfway to my lips slipping into confusion. What do you mean? I asked, my voice lighter than I felt. Erin blinked. Oh, nothing. Just a joke. Inside joke. But it wasn't, because I knew that tone. And I knew the kind of silence that followed wasn't the kind you recover from with cranberry sauce and another round of coffee. Something had been said. And something had definitely been understood. Just not by me. Not yet. The room shifted after that. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to feel it in my gut. My dad cleared his throat and started talking about the football game. My uncle laughed a little too loud. Erin took another sip of her wine like she was trying to bury the taste of what she'd just said. But I couldn't let it go. I couldn't ignore the way my brother had coughed into his sleeve like he'd been caught off guard, or worse, caught in something. So I leaned in. What did you mean by that? I asked again, this time low, just between us. Erin tilted her head, the same way she did when she was trying to look innocent. It was a joke. Honestly, babe, I didn't mean anything by it. Who was the other invitation from? She hesitated, just for a breath, but I caught it. That's not important, she said. I laughed under my breath. The hell it isn't. I stood up from the table, slow and deliberate, my hands still resting on the edges of my plate. I need some air, I said to no one in particular. The room barely acknowledged me. I stepped outside. Cold November wind hit me hard across the face, but I didn't care. I needed the sting. I paced along the edge of the yard, the same patch of grass we played football on as kids, now coated in frost and dead leaves. My mind was racing, but the more I thought, the more one question kept pressing itself forward. Why had everyone reacted like they knew? When I finally walked back inside, the party was winding down. Erin was helping my mom with dishes. My brother, Jared, was on the couch, scrolling through his phone with that glazed-over look he always used when avoiding reality. I sat down next to him, maybe a little too close. You good? I asked. He nodded without looking up. Yeah. You sure? Another nod. Then I said it. You and Erin got a history I should know about. That got his eyes off the screen. What? No. Where's that coming from? I just stared at him. He shifted uncomfortably, his leg bouncing. She made a weird joke, I said. Something about a secret Thanksgiving. You choked like someone had stuffed guilt down your throat. So I'm asking. He exhaled sharply. Man, it's not like that. Then what is it like? He rubbed his face with both hands. It was before you. Before she met you. I froze. That's all I needed. You slept with her. He didn't answer. And that was answer enough. I stood up slowly, heart punching against my ribs. For how long? He looked up at me. It was a few times. Casual. We weren't serious. You didn't think to mention that when I brought her around? I didn't know it was her until you introduced us, and then it just got weird. I figured it didn't matter. Didn't matter. I said, my voice rising. You knew. You recognized her. And you said nothing. He stood now, too, like that would somehow level the ground between us. Come on, man. You think I planned this? I didn't go after your girl. You met her on your own. That's not my fault. No, I said quietly, but lying about it, letting me fall for her while you smirk across dinner tables and keep your mouth shut, that is on you. Jared looked away. I didn't think it would go anywhere serious. Well, it did, I snapped. And now I'm sitting in our family's living room realizing that everyone around me might have known but me. He opened his mouth, but I walked away. I didn't want an apology. I wanted truth. And suddenly I realized, this wasn't just about Aaron. This was about everyone who smiled in my face and kept secrets behind their teeth. As I stepped back into the kitchen, Erin turned around like she'd been waiting. Her smile faltered the moment she saw my face. "We're leaving," I said. She didn't argue, because she knew what I knew now. I had brought the wine, she had brought the lie, and my family, they brought their silence. The car ride home was dead quiet. She didn't reach for the radio. I didn't reach for her hand. We sat with the kind of silence that only exists between two people who both know the other has something to say, but neither one wants to go first. I kept my eyes on the road, hands tight on the wheel, jaw locked so hard it ached. Halfway to the apartment, she finally spoke. "Look, it was before you and I ever met. You have to know that." I nodded once, slowly. "I do, but the way you said it, like it was funny, like it was some inside joke at my expense. That's not just about timing, Aaron. That's about respect." She sighed. "I didn't mean to humiliate you." "You didn't humiliate me," I said. "You exposed yourself. And my brother." She looked away, out the window. "I didn't know you two were related until after we started talking. And when I found out, it was already awkward. What was I supposed to do? Walk up to you and say, 'Hey, small world, I used to sleep with your brother'?" I clenched the wheel harder. Yeah, actually, that would have been the exact right thing to do. We pulled into the lot of our apartment complex. I killed the engine but didn't get out. I just sat there, watching the condensation roll down the windshield as the silence returned and settled between us again. "You were going to keep this from me forever," I said finally, "weren't you?" She didn't answer. And that was enough. We got inside, and she went straight to the bedroom. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the spot on the counter where I'd once written her name in flour the morning I made pancakes for her birthday. That same spot now felt like it belonged to someone else. Like that version of me had no idea what was coming. I poured myself a glass of water. Didn't drink it. I was too busy replaying every moment in my head, the dinner, the laugh, the look on Jared's face when I said her name for the first time a few months back. The way he joked, "Careful, she looks like trouble," and how I'd laughed, thinking it was just brotherly teasing. But now, it all reeked. The next morning, I packed a bag, not because I was sure I was leaving her for good, but because I couldn't sleep in that bed. Not after knowing the same woman I thought I was building something real with had shared that part of herself with him, and never said a word. She came out of the bedroom as I was zipping the duffel. "Where are you going?" "To breathe," I said. "That's it?" she asked, arms crossed. I looked at her for a long moment. "You had every chance to tell me. You had time. You had moments. But you waited until it came out as a joke, and even then, you didn't own it. So no, Aaron, that's not it. But it's enough, for right now." She didn't try to stop me. That said more than anything else. I drove to Nate's. Of course it was Nate. It's always the guy who's been there through every version of you, the stupid ones, the blind ones, and the ones who finally say, "Enough." He opened the door, saw the bag, and didn't ask questions. He just said, "Guest room's made up. Beer's in the fridge." That night, we sat on his balcony, just like old times, with a cold drink in hand and a sky too dark to make promises. After a long silence, he asked, "So, you gonna talk about it?" "Jared slept with Aaron," I said flatly. Nate let out a low whistle. "Damn, yeah. And she never told you?" "Nope, not until she let it slip at dinner. Made a joke about a secret Thanksgiving. Whole damn room knew before I did." Nate shook his head slowly. "That's a dirty kind of silence, man." I nodded. "And now I don't know who I'm more angry at, her, him, or me for not seeing it sooner." He took a sip and leaned back. "You know what the worst part of betrayal is?" he asked. "It doesn't break you all at once. It shows up in pieces. One laugh, one glance, one skipped detail that doesn't make sense until it does." I didn't sleep much that night, but for the first time since Thanksgiving, I stopped wondering what I did wrong. Because I finally realized, I didn't do anything. They did, and now, they could sit in the mess they made, together. I didn't hear from Aaron for 2 days. No texts. No missed calls. Just silence, the kind that doesn't ask forgiveness, only hopes to outwait the storm. And Jared? Same thing. Radio silent, like if he stayed out of sight long enough, the mess would clean itself up. But I wasn't cleaning it. Not this time. Day 3, I got a message from my mom. Mom, can we talk soon? I'd like to understand what happened. I read it 3 times before replying. Me, did you know? It took her 12 minutes to answer. Mom, not for sure. But I suspected. I saw the way she looked at him last Christmas. That was it. That was all I needed. A woman I loved had once shared a bed with my brother, then slipped into a chair beside him at every family dinner like it was nothing. And my mother had watched it unfold without a word. I showed Nate the texts. He let out a low whistle, then handed me a beer without asking. She saw it and said nothing, he asked. I nodded. Just kept cooking the turkey like nothing was burning. She's probably telling herself it wasn't her place, he muttered. I leaned back in the chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. You know what gets me? The way they all smiled at me. Like I was in on the joke. Like the punchline hadn't landed yet. Your mom still wants to talk. Yeah. He looked at me, serious now. You gonna let her? I shrugged. She's my mom. Doesn't mean she didn't let you drown. That sat with me longer than I wanted it to. I ended up meeting her for coffee the next afternoon. Neutral territory. Somewhere with enough noise to keep emotions polite. She showed up in her usual pressed slacks and long coat, trying too hard to look composed. We ordered. Saturday. She took a deep breath. David, I'm sorry. I sipped my coffee, eyes steady. For what? For not saying anything. For not warning you. I didn't know for sure, but I had my suspicions. And I kept quiet. Why? Because I thought it would pass. That it was a mistake they'd outgrow before you ever knew. But when you brought her back around, when things got serious, I should have said something. You think? Her eyes brimmed, but I didn't offer a tissue. I failed you, she said. I wanted to protect the family. And you chose silence over honesty. She didn't deny it. I can't fix what happened, she whispered. But I'm still your mother. I nodded slowly. And I'm still your son. But we're gonna need to relearn what those roles mean. We sat in silence after that. Not comfortable, but not angry either. Just 2 people sifting through the ash. After she left, I walked through the park nearby. Cold wind cutting across the path, dogs running, kids bundled up like snowmen. I sat on a bench with the wind in my face and Aaron's voice in my head. It was before you. Maybe it was. But betrayal doesn't need a timestamp. It only needs a lie. And hers came wrapped in omission. That night, she finally texted. Aaron, I know I have no right to ask, but can we talk? I stared at the screen for a while, then typed. Me, 1 conversation. 1 time. Public place. You talk. I listen. Then we're done. She replied immediately. Aaron, tomorrow, 4 p.m. That coffee shop off Maple. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. She'd be there. And I would too. Not for closure. Not for apology. But to make it clear. Some bridges don't burn. They're walked away from. Stone by stone. Step by steady step. I got to the coffee shop 10 minutes early. Didn't bring a journal. Didn't bring a book. Just sat at a corner table with a black coffee and a quiet mind. I wanted to feel the silence. Let it settle. Let it thicken before she walked in. Let it remind me that this stillness, was mine now. Not hers to shake, not Jared's to disrupt. At exactly 4:03 p.m., Erin walked through the door. No makeup, hair pulled back, a beige coat too big for her shoulders, like it was trying to hide her. She looked around until she spotted me, then gave a small wave, like we were just 2 friends grabbing a casual drink. She sat down across from me. No hug, no smile, just a slow breath and those familiar green eyes that once convinced me they saw only me. Thanks for coming, she said. I nodded. Silence stretched between us. She fidgeted with the sleeve of her coat. I didn't move. You said you'd listen, she said finally. I nodded again. So talk. She flinched slightly at the tone, then leaned forward like she was bracing herself. I should have told you from the beginning, she said. But when we started dating, I didn't even recognize your last name at first. It didn't click. But it clicked eventually, I said, evenly. She nodded. Yeah. The second I met Jared. And by then, I didn't know what to do. You could have told the truth. I was scared, she said. I didn't want to ruin what we had. I let out a bitter chuckle. So you just built it on a landmine and hoped I wouldn't step on it. Her mouth tightened. It wasn't like that. No. I said, my voice low now. Then what was it like, Aaron? You sat across from me every night, shared stories, made promises, and all the while you knew you'd slept with my brother. She winced at the word, slept, because that's what it was. And nothing she could say would reframe it. I didn't plan to keep it from you forever, she whispered. I leaned forward. But you did. You kept it until your tongue slipped, until the room tensed, and suddenly everyone knew except the one person who should have heard it first. I'm sorry, she said, quietly. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. She looked up at me, eyes glassy. I cared about you, David. I still do. That's not love, I said. That's convenience. And I'm not someone you keep around just because it's working well enough. She looked down at her hands. I didn't expect to fall for you, she said. And by the time I realized how deep it was, I was too afraid to break it. I thought maybe I could bury it and it would stay buried. Secrets don't rot underground, I said. They grow vines. They choke everything that tries to grow beside them. We sat there, the hum of the espresso machine and soft indie music filling the air between us. She wiped a tear, quietly, like she didn't want to give it power. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said. I just needed to say it. I nodded. You did. And now we're done. That shook her a little. No chance at anything. I looked her in the eyes, clear, direct, steady. No. Her lips pressed together. She gave one slow nod. Then she stood, hesitated, and whispered, you were the best thing I ever ruined. And she walked out. I didn't watch her go. I didn't check my phone. I didn't feel regret. I just sat there, drank the last of my coffee, and stared out the window. Because when someone finally tells you the whole truth, you don't respond with questions. You respond with boundaries. And that's what I did. That night, I wrote in my journal. She said she didn't mean to hurt me. But people don't fall into betrayal. They choose not to warn you, when they see the cliff edge coming. And I chose, from that day forward, to stop waiting for anyone else. To be the kind of honest I already am. The morning after that coffee shop meeting, I woke up lighter. Not healed, not over it, but lighter. There was no text from her. No late night, I miss you. No half-hearted apology to reframe the mess. And thank God for that. I'd said what I needed to say. She had her chance, and she used it to try and fold guilt into sympathy. But I wasn't her therapist. And I wasn't going to be her recovery project. I was done being the guy who made it easy for people to feel better about doing the wrong thing. That morning, I made a full breakfast for the first time in weeks. Eggs, toast, real bacon, not that turkey crap she insisted on. I played music, let sunlight fill the kitchen. And when I looked around, I didn't feel like I was in a half-life anymore. I felt present. And then, mid-bite, my phone buzzed. Jared. I stared at the name, let it buzz twice more. Then I picked up. Hey, he said, voice cautious. What do you want? I wanted to talk. Just us. You had your chance, I said. At Thanksgiving. At every family gathering before that. You could have said something, and you didn't. I know, he said. I know I screwed up. I laughed, low and sharp. You didn't just screw up, Jared. You built a lie and handed me the keys to it. Watched me walk in and decorate it. Watched me live in it. He didn't speak. I pressed on. You let me fall for a woman you'd already had. And then you sat across from me with that smug face, pretending to be my brother. I'm still your brother, he said quietly. No, you're not, I snapped. Because brothers don't stab each other in the back and call it a misunderstanding. I didn't mean to hurt you. Stop saying that, I said, my voice rising. Stop acting like it was an accident. You chose silence. Every day you didn't speak, every day you smiled in my face knowing what she was hiding, you chose it. He let out a breath. What do you want from me, man? I said I was sorry. What else is there? There's distance, Jared, I said. That's what there is. From now on, I don't owe you closeness just because we share blood. Silence. Then he asked the one thing I hadn't prepared for. What do I tell Mom and Dad? I blinked. What? They're worried. Mom's been crying. Dad keeps asking if we can fix this. I shook my head. You tell them the truth, Jared. You tell them you betrayed your brother for a fling you didn't even respect enough to be honest about. You tell them that you broke it. Not me. He didn't reply. And I didn't wait. I ended the call. And that was the last time I planned to speak to him for a long while. That night, Nate and I sat outside again, beers in hand, porch light flickering like it was trying to hold on to something just a little longer. I told him about the call. He just nodded. You're doing the right thing, he said. It doesn't feel like it, I replied. Because you've always been the fixer, he said. The one who smooths it over, plays mediator, pretends the cracks are just shadows. But some things, you don't fix them, you walk away from them clean. I didn't speak for a moment. Then I looked at him. You ever been betrayed like that? He nodded slowly. Yeah. Not by family, but close enough. What did you do? I stopped asking why, he said. Stop trying to make it make sense. Because betrayal's not about logic, it's about values. And when someone shows you theirs, believe them. I sat with that for a long time. Later that night, I wrote, betrayal doesn't always wear fangs. Sometimes it wears your last name. Sometimes it passes the mashed potatoes, laughs at your jokes, and lets you raise a toast, with the knife still in your back. And as I closed the journal, I knew something had finally shifted. Not in them, in me. A week after that call with Jared, I got an invitation to Sunday dinner. Text from Mom. Mom, just family. Nothing dramatic. We'd like to see you. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the screen like it might burn me. It wasn't the invitation that hurt. It was the idea that everyone would gather around the same table, same stories, same mashed potatoes, like nothing had cracked wide open in the middle of that house just 7 days ago. Like I could just slide back into place between people who let me live inside a lie. Nate saw the text over my shoulder and didn't say anything right away. Then he asked, you gonna go? I don't know. He nodded. You don't owe anyone your presence just because they're uncomfortable with your absence. That one hit deep. Still, by Sunday afternoon, I found myself in my truck, idling outside my parents' house. Same porch swing, same cracked driveway, same wind chimes hanging by the kitchen window, playing the same broken tune they had for the last decade. I didn't get out, not right away, but after 5 minutes of sitting with my jaw clenched and my chest heavy, I stepped out, walked up the stairs, and rang the bell. My mom answered with red-rimmed eyes and a too big smile. David, she breathed, pulling me into a hug I didn't return. She led me inside. The house smelled like roast beef and rosemary. Comfort food for an uncomfortable evening. Jared was already there. Of course he was. He stood as I entered, like the formality would somehow reset our relationship. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Don't, I said. I'm not here for speeches. My dad gave me a nod from the recliner. The same nod he gave me when I was 10 and hit my first home run. Silent approval wrapped in regret. We sat at the table. Me, Mom, Dad, Jared. 4 people pretending. I picked at my plate. Mom cleared her throat. We were hoping this could be a start. I looked at her. A start of what? She blinked. Of healing. Of putting this behind us. I laughed, low and cold. Behind us? Mom, it wasn't you who found out the woman he loved had been passed around behind his back like a shared secret. It wasn't you who stood at a table full of people who knew more about his relationship than he did. David, Jared started. No, I snapped. You don't get to speak here. You had your turn. Now it's mine. I turned back to my parents. You raised me to value trust. To lead with honesty. And yet, both of you sat at that table and said nothing while I poured wine for a woman who slept with your other son. My dad's face tightened. It wasn't our place. I leaned forward. You're damn right it wasn't. It was hers. But when she failed me, you all did too. The room went quiet. Even the wind chimes stopped. I pushed back from the table, stood slowly. I came here today because I needed to say this out loud. Not to start over. Not to rebuild. But to make something crystal clear. This version of family, the one that lets silence do the talking, that chooses comfort over truth. I'm not part of it anymore. Mom began to cry. Dad stared at his plate. Jared wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm just done. And I walked out. Not with a slam. Not with a dramatic goodbye. Just the sound of my boots on hardwood and the weight of a man who finally stopped asking for permission to stand up for himself. That night, back at Nate's, I didn't drink. I didn't journal. I just sat in the dark, breathing, knowing that peace doesn't always feel good at first. Sometimes, it feels like grief, but grief that clears the field, so something real can finally grow. Days passed. The air turned colder. Stores swapped out pumpkins for tinsel. It felt like the whole world was trying to move on, trying to get festive again, while I was still digging through the emotional wreckage left behind by people I once trusted with my whole life. But I wasn't drowning anymore. I was clearing the debris. Slowly. Carefully. No rush. One afternoon, I took a walk through downtown. Cold wind scraping across my face, scarf pulled tight, boots hitting pavement with that sharp, echoing rhythm. I passed couples holding hands, kids bundled up with their noses pressed to glass windows, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel bitter watching them. I felt awake. There's a certain kind of clarity that only comes after betrayal. It's not peace exactly, it's sharper than that. It's the moment you stop waiting for an apology and realize the closure was yours to give yourself all along. I found myself standing outside the bookstore again. Claire's bookstore. Hadn't been there since before Thanksgiving. She looked up when I walked in. That same half-smile, soft but honest. "You made it," she said. "Barely," I joked. She gestured to the shelf behind her. "Your journal's still here." I raised a brow. "You mean the one I already filled?" "No," she said, pulling out a new one, black leather, thicker, untouched. "The one you're ready for now." I took it, opened it, ran my fingers across the blank first page. "Looks intimidating," I muttered. "Looks like you're not afraid of starting over anymore," she replied. I didn't know how to answer that, so I didn't. Instead, I bought the journal, walked back outside, and found a bench overlooking the frozen fountain in the square. I sat down, let the world move around me. Then I opened to page 1 and wrote. The truth doesn't always come like thunder. Sometimes it slips in during dessert. Sometimes it laughs while everyone else goes quiet. Sometimes it comes with a name you thought you could trust. But when it comes, it frees you. I closed the book and leaned back against the bench. That's when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Jared, wasn't Aaron. It was my dad. "Dad, your mom's been quiet. She misses you." "I do too. Come by. Just you and me." I stared at the message. A few weeks ago, I'd have jumped at the invite, craved the idea of rebuilding, but now I paused. Because not every door deserves to be reopened, and not every silence deserves to be filled. But something told me I needed to go, not to make peace with him, not for his sake, for mine. So I went. Later that night, I found myself on my childhood porch again. Same creaky step near the end. Same porch light with the loose bulb that flickered like a heartbeat. Dad opened the door and stepped aside. No hug, just a nod. We sat in the living room. No TV, no mom, just a fire crackling and the weight of everything unspoken. "I'm not gonna justify anything," he started. "Because you'd be right to walk away." I didn't respond. He leaned forward, hands clasped, voice low. "I failed you. I watched you be made a fool of and said nothing. I told myself it wasn't my story to tell, but that was a lie. I stayed quiet because it was easier. Still, I said nothing. I've lived my whole life trying to keep peace," he said. "But peace built on silence. It crumbles eventually." He looked at me then, eyes red, but not from crying, from shame. "I don't expect forgiveness. Just a chance. Not to be your hero again, just to be your father." That landed. And after a long pause, I finally spoke. "Then start by never asking me to forget." He nodded slowly. "I won't." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But when I left that night, I didn't feel hollow. I felt heard. And that was enough for now. Back at Nate's, I wrote. "You don't heal by erasing. You heal by remembering, and refusing to repeat." December rolled in with snow. The kind that dusts rooftops and softens the sound of everything. Life didn't slow down, but it sure felt quieter. I didn't go back to the family house again. Didn't hear much from Jared. Didn't ask either. Aaron was a ghost now, one I didn't miss, one I didn't chase. The truth is, I was finally starting to feel like myself again. Not the version of me that needed other people to tell him who he was. The version that could sit alone, unbothered, and know he was whole. Claire and I crossed paths a few more times. Never forced. Never fast. Just easy. Like the world handed me someone I didn't have to explain myself to. She didn't ask about Jared. Didn't ask about Aaron. Didn't even ask why I always paused before I let anyone get close. She just listened when I spoke. And stayed when I didn't. One night, after we closed down her shop together, she handed me a folded piece of paper and said, "This reminded me of you." I opened it later, sitting on Nate's balcony with my coat pulled tight and the city lights flickering below. It was a quote. "You will be too much for some people. Those are not your people." I smiled, because maybe that was it. Maybe I spent too long trying to shrink myself down to fit inside someone else's comfort zone, inside someone else's silence. I didn't belong there. I never did. The next morning, I got another text from Mom. "Mom, trees going up tonight. Just us. No Jared. No pressure." I stared at it, thumb hovering. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I had been. That fire had cooled into something calmer. I'd stopped expecting apologies. Stopped hoping people would say exactly what I needed to hear. But still, some things mattered. Like showing up for yourself, even when you have to walk back into the same room where your trust was broken. So I went. She opened the door and gave me a long look, like she wasn't sure I'd actually come. I nodded once. She stepped aside. The living room smelled like pine and cinnamon. The tree was half decorated. Boxes of ornaments spilled across the floor. Dad stood off to the side, holding a tangled mess of lights. No, Jared. I helped string the lights. Untangled garland. Hung the ornament I'd made in 3rd grade, the one with the chipped paint and crooked smile. It was quiet, but it was real. Afterward, as the tree glowed in the dim light, Mom sat beside me on the couch. She didn't say much. Just reached out and placed something in my hand. It was a photo. Me and Jared, sitting side by side on the front porch in our 20s. Both laughing at something just out of frame. I remember that day. It was before things got complicated. Before adulthood made things harder than they should have been. She whispered, "I still have hope." I looked at her and said, gently, "Hope is good. But so is honesty." She nodded, didn't press. And for the first time in a long time, I believed she heard me. When I got back to Nate's, I pulled out the journal. Wrote, "Forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it means walking back through the door. Just to prove you don't need to stay." The tree, the lights, the ghost of what we used to be, it all sat behind me now. And ahead, I saw myself, clear, not waiting for anyone to hand me peace. Just living it. New Year's Eve came quiet this time. No big parties. No glitter. No pretending to feel joy for the sake of everyone else's countdown. Just me, Nate, and 2 lawn chairs out on the porch, wrapped in blankets, beers in hand, and the kind of silence that feels like a clean slate, not emptiness. He looked over at me as fireworks cracked in the distance. "You good?" I nodded. "I'm not broken." He grinned. "That's not the same as being good." I shrugged. "It's better. Being good means going back to normal. But I don't want that. I want different. I want real." He raised his bottle. "To different." We clinked. And just like that, the year flipped over. New numbers. New air. Same man, but clearer eyes. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, grabbed my coat, my boots, and the journal Claire gave me. I drove with no destination in mind, just the hum of the engine and the soft frost painting the edges of the windshield. I ended up at the lake, frozen now, still as glass. I stood at the edge and watched my breath drift in front of me. Then I pulled out the journal. Last page. I'd been saving it. I wrote. They lied. They laughed. They kept their silence like a gift, wrapped in shame. And I opened it with both hands, believing it was love. But now, I know better. Love doesn't hide in laughter that cuts. It doesn't leave you last to know. And it sure as hell doesn't come from people too cowardly to speak it. I closed the book. That journal had seen everything. The letter Aaron never owned up to. The silence Jared weaponized. My mother's guilt, my father's regret, my own stubborn hope. It had carried all of it. And now it was full. I stood there a while longer, watching the light change across the ice. Then I turned, walked back to the truck, and started driving toward the bookstore. Claire was there, unlocking the door, scarf tucked around her chin, smile already forming when she saw me. "Let me guess," she said, "you're out of pages." I held up the journal. She nodded, walked behind the counter, and pulled out another. This one was red. She handed it to me. "This one's for stories that aren't about endings." I opened the cover. Blank, wide, waiting. "I think I'm ready," I said. "Good," she replied, "because you've earned every word that comes next." I paid, stepped back out into the cold, and walked with purpose. Not rushed, not running, just steady. Because the man I was when I walked into Thanksgiving, he didn't know the price of silence. He didn't know how deeply people could bury the truth in plain sight. But the man walking forward now, he does. And he's never going back. Not to lies. Not to half-love. Not to family who keep secrets in the name of peace. He's walking into something else. Something honest. And that's the real gift.